Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. If you're catching this, you've joined us for the Keep It Simple podcast. We are on episode 20, which is hard to believe. It's, I guess, 5 months, week in and week out of conversations, and super stoked about tonight. We have a longtime friend, Alexandria Simonton, on the show today, and Alex, I've known her for what seems like forever, many ages and stages of life, and we actually reconnected a few weeks ago at Charity Lucas's wedding, was able to catch up and kind of hear where she is and how she is and what God's got going in her life. So encouraging. And so Alex, welcome to the Keep It Simple podcast.
Yeah, I am happy to be here. This is a cool opportunity. Ben and I were grooms. Well, no, brides people.
I have no idea. I tell everybody I was a bridesman. That's fair. That's the only way I know how to put it. But thankfully we were standing beside each other.
It was cool to catch up that way.
Yes, it was. It was indeed. Yeah. And so most of us who are listening and tuned in will know you. There's a lot now who are following along in the Midwest who will not know you. And so just kind of give us the cliff notes of you, if you don't mind, just a little bio introduction before we take off into your story.
Yeah, I, like you said, my name's Alex Simonton. Or Alexandria, potato kind of thing. But I am a digital media coordinator and resident photographer at Compassion Christian Church. In every sense of the word, we are a megachurch. But I came on staff actually 4 years ago, 2 days ago, which is awesome. Wow. And that's crazy to see the fruition from that. I grew up in the church. I'm a military brat. I have loved Savannah. I think Savannah is the best city in the world. It's cool to see how God used me to come here. There's so many things that the way that God set me up to come here, that was only by him. And it's been amazing to have community through that. I moved here 2 weeks before COVID hit. But other than that, like, I am blessed to have an amazing boyfriend. And he is great to do life with. He's phenomenal. I know he's going to be listening, but I am so thankful for him and the way that we've been able to walk through life together in many different stages. And he is definitely somebody that champions me and walks alongside me. And yeah, I also lead worship. I serve in students. I am just the epitome of the person that I know what God has done through me, and I want to serve others in that way. And I know how important, and that's what's so cool about this podcast, because I am so passionate about community and discipleship, which is now about to be my new job starting in 2026. And that's what I'm going to school for at Liberty University, studying theology with an emphasis in discipleship. And that's where, like, my heart sings. God has blessed me with creative talents. I am not athletic. At all. That all went to my brother, and so I got the whole creative gene, and I serve an awesome God, and he is the ultimate creator, so I get to be creative and do it through my job. But later on down the road, the next couple of years after I finish school, I will step into full-time women's ministry and counseling women, and championing them and how they can delight in the Lord and walking through things. So yeah.
That's perfect, man. So before because we're going to talk forever how long about you and the importance of community, but to give Matt a shout out, Maddie, I think you and I were visiting there at Trinity, I guess, and it doesn't get much better than old Matt Meeks, to be honest.
Nope.
That guy is just a solid human being. The whole family.
Yeah.
I forget who I was talking to a couple weeks ago. It was on one of the episodes. I'd have to go back, but we were talking about Mickey and Vicky and being able to see, catch up with Mickey and Vicky there at the wedding. And Mickey doesn't change.
No, God, no.
Mickey looks and acts, and Mickey is the exact same person that I met, 15 years ago or whatever it was. It's like he doesn't age.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough about Matt. Matt's awesome, but back to you. So you mentioned that you were raised in the church, and just in your story, let's start there. So both mom and dad active in church, or I know that you were at Trinity. Is that where you were raised, Trinity United Methodist in Warner Robins?
Yeah, so my mom grew up Methodist, and my dad bounced back and forth between Baptist and Methodist when he was growing up, and so they just kind of decided to meet in a middle ground, and they raised both my brother and I Methodist. When 9/11 hit, we moved to Warner Robins.
Okay.
And we went to Trinity ever since then, and we moved away a couple of times. And to be honest, because of Trinity was the reason we basically came back every time.
Okay.
Grew up in the church. My parents were super active. I'll be transparent. Their relationship with the Lord is very different than how I express it, but I think it's just a generational difference. And we've had very many conversations about that. But I saw how what made me want to continue to further my relationship with the Lord as I grew up in church was because the way that I saw people step up when my dad was gone in deployment. In total, my dad was deployed 4 years over his course of his military career. And that's obviously not 4 years in total, but,
Sure.
Over the course of time between 2001 to 2011. And he, and I just saw the way that people stepped up, that people were an example for me, for my brother, the way that they helped my mom. That was the example of what the church is and what Christ would have wanted. And so I couldn't have asked for a better example of a church. I still love Trinity. I don't get to go as often because when you work in ministry, you don't get to go to your home church very much.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Trinity introduced me to Space Between.
Yeah, we'll get there for sure. So before we came on camera, you were talking about when you first encountered Christ by the Holy Spirit. And so I don't guess I remembered. I should, but I guess I didn't. So George, you were there during George.
Yeah.
And then were you there during Brooke, or had you aged out and graduated up? You had Brooke too?
So before George, I had 4 youth pastors prior to them.
Yeah, I remember there was
George. It was a revolving door.
Yeah.
And a very hard time. And then we had George. And then from my sophomore year on, I had Brooke.
Okay. So George Whidden, George, who is awesome. That guy, we need to have him on at some point. He,
You really should.
Yeah.
I actually he reached out to me in May of last year, and I went and spoke on his beach retreat in July, and that was just the coolest thing to come back and just see how he's serving in Albany.
Yeah.
And he's doing great.
Yeah. And their candles are amazing. So if you're listening to this, watch this. Is it Modero? Modero,
Something
I
like
think,
that.
Modero. You can find them on our Simplify Instagram pages and stuff. We're following them. But, buy a candle. You'll make George's day. So George was your youth pastor, and you said that, oddly enough, Jared Middleton then plays a piece or a part in your story. Talk us through that.
Yeah. Jared Middleton, I don't know if you're listening.
He will.
You probably don't even remember me.
No, he will listen.
If he even remembers me, but he was we went to Laguna Beach, I think is what it is. It was the same retreat center George took us on, which that was insane. I haven't been back there since the day I was saved.
Okay.
So it was just a total 180 coming back for that retreat. But Jared spoke on the retreat. Typically with any of the churches, I think it was normal that sometimes there was somebody invited in to come and be the main speaker for the weekend, and that was him. And he spoke on the prodigal son, and he's just it doesn't matter how many times you've been to church. If you just feel like it's a routine, but there's something that you're wanting to take that next step, then just come home. And there was just that flip that switched. And the thing is I have always been the person that if I'm going to be in, I'm going to be all in.
Oh, yeah.
And God knows that too. And so that was when God was like, ministry, you are called into ministry.
How
from
old
here
were
on.
you?
And like 14.
14, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know what that looked like because at that point in time, it really was only kids ministry and youth ministry. I didn't really think coming all the way into pastoralship at that, like, would be the next step for me. I sure as heck didn't think my next role that I'm stepping into would even be a possibility. But at that point in time, I was like, I mean, I don't really know if I like working with kids. I like working with youth, but, and then transparency, and my parents will listen to this. My parents didn't want me to step into ministry because they saw it. My mom served on church committee after church committee. She knew all the hard ins and outs. She saw the revolving door, and she was just like, I'm okay if anybody else's kid does it. Praise them for doing it, but my own, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
And so she was very concerned and was just like, I think you'd be great at that, but maybe it's like a part-time thing, or maybe you just like serve like in a really great capacity. And so I hindered that calling. And then later on, after getting my master's in my undergrad in education, that I was like, I don't want to teach.
Yeah.
And I recognized that I was walking in disobedience of what God had called for me. And it 100% was just what it is today.
So did you,
and it could be,
you went all the way through undergrad and then got your master's to teach? Okay. And then after that realized, oh gosh, so had you done your student teaching and all of your placement stuff?
Yeah. And I actually taught, I had the dream job. If you were going to graduate, I got this job at Georgia Southern teaching in their, they have like an elementary school on site.
Okay.
And I had this job offered to me. It was one that was like, did not need to be turned down. And I taught pre-K for 6 months after I graduated. And I was just like, this ain't it. It was really hard.
Yeah.
It was, and they always tell you it's gonna be, but I just knew, like, I wasn't sleeping. I gained a significant amount of weight. I was anxious consistently. I remember calling Charity and Brooke and talking to mentors that I had in Statesboro that I was like, I'm not okay and I don't know what to do. And at that point in time, it was December of 2019, and I get a call from my current boss. And I had been serving with Compassion's college program and running their social media. And he was like, hey, we really like what you're doing. Would you consider coming in for an interview? And I was like, sure, why not? I mean, like, I didn't know what they were going to offer. And I went in, and it immediately just felt like home. And I have a phenomenal boss who is another person that walks alongside me and just mentors me in the best way possible, and he is phenomenal in that sense, and I have built a great relationship with him and his family, and he has been somebody that's just a second family here, and it's been great to see the growth from that. But after that, so then COVID hit, and what I was going to do was I accepted the job with Compassion. And I was still teaching, and they're like, you can't teach pre-Kers online. We're going to honor your contract until the end of the year. But so Georgia, at that point in time, just taught pre-Kers on like a standard platform. Everybody was doing the same thing. Okay. It wasn't the teachers. And so then I switched to full-time with Compassion. And yeah, and so I've been there since.
Yeah. So kind of backing up a little bit, you talk about being called to ministry or feeling this call on your life at 14.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes people will come to me and they'll say, hey, Ben, I think I'm being called to ministry, you know, and my canned answer, it's not being dismissive in any way. It's just honest, is if you can go do anything else with your life and have peace in your heart, go do that. like truly, if you can go teach pre-K and have peace, like that true, genuine, abiding peace, and then just volunteer at your church, go do that.
Yeah.
If you try some of those things and you're lacking that peace, and it's like, this ain't it, then maybe you're called to ministry. And I can't tell you, Jared would be one for sure. Brooke, other people, but those that I am closest with, my friend Brandon here, there's this kind of common thread that it's like, you're called to ministry, don't really want to do it, would actually like to be doing something else, but no matter what else you try, the peace isn't there. That kind of feeling of being home. So backing up, you're on a beach retreat. George is your student pastor.
Yeah.
Jared is there teaching. Based off of the prodigal, you have what Wesley would say is the strange warming of the heart.
Yeah.
And so you kind of step into this relationship with Jesus, and so then your faith kind of becomes your own, I guess, possibly for the first time, 14 years old. What role, two parts. Number one, what was it like, the transition, the feeling, because being a teenager and being deeply connected, and subscribed to and bought into George, then George transitions out and Brooke transitions in. What was that season like? And then how did you see God's faithfulness woven through both of those tenures? That would be something I'd be curious in. I worked alongside both of those people. So just from a student standpoint, what was your experience?
So when I told George I was saved, I was like, I've 100% accepted this calling, and it was true. It was genuine. I wasn't doing this for the attention for the show. This was genuinely, I had never felt this wave of security, and we've talked about this. I'm a very anxious person, and the only time I felt peace is when I am at this pinnacle. Especially then was like the first time I felt peace, if that makes sense. Especially at a very young age, I experienced anxiety, and I think George just knew that, and so him and I developed a very close relationship. And like I said, I spoke at his beach retreat, which ended up becoming something that like that's just, that was how our relationship was. And so then he planned a student-led weekend, and it was like me and a couple other students speaking. I was helping lead worship. I was getting ready for these things. And this was all between so I was saved in July, and then December we have our youth concert. If you remember Trinity's youth choir was a big thing back when I was
deal.
Huge deal. God bless Vicky Slavic. But George, I kind of knew something was up because there was a youth meeting after, but I just thought it was an end of the year thing. Because when the youth choir ended, then we didn't meet back until the first of the year. And so George was also acting weird, and he announced he was leaving, and I think that was the first time I'd ever really experienced heartbreak in the sense of having somebody leave in a transition. And growing up as a military kid, I experienced that often, but that was the first time I'd really felt that depth of it, of not understanding, because I was also young. Like I said, I was 14, and so that heartbreak. And then George steps out, transparent. I don't remember who the interim was. That might have been Sarah Ulm. It was Emily
Bagwell.
Okay. I couldn't remember if it was her or Sarah Ulm. But
no, it was Emily, and she was fun to work with. She was there 6 months or so, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
It's Bill's niece.
Yes. I couldn't remember. Like I said, there was a revolving door. And so for a period of time, I couldn't remember who the interim was and who wasn't. And so she stepped in, and then fall of my sophomore year was Brooke. And our youth group got the biggest when George was there. In that amount of time, not saying that wasn't with Brooke's time, but in that amount of time, like that I had seen, even my brother's 5 years older than me, and he went through a lot of that transition too. And so, even before, like even when my brother's in youth, when George was there, that was our pinnacle. And he and it was just because and you know him well. And for anybody that's listening and knows him, he is a relational person. Like, he knows you one-on-one and then is just great in a group setting. And so, like, there's a wall built in all of us, and a lot of kids, transparent, didn't come back, which was very hard. There was a hard hit because, like, we just experienced so much hurt. And it wasn't George's fault. There was a lot of understanding. He had a new baby. He wasn't married very long. I think he was my age when all of this was happening.
And he was driving from Albany. I mean, that dude was driving an hour plus each way.
Yeah.
Had a chance to go home, had a chance to go back to his home church. And, but I can tell you, so from the flip side of that, not to interrupt you, that was not a decision lightly made.
No, he was heartbroken.
I mean, he would sit with us, with me and Jared and different people and just, I mean, he really, really fasted, prayed, agonized, and then even after the yes, it was still, I mean, he was deeply, deeply bought into the work that he was doing at Trinity. That's the reason why your group produced so much fruit, because he was in,
Yeah. And so he was, we could tell he was broken up from it. And then that next fall, Brooke steps in, and Brooke is dynamic. I mean, and the funny thing is like Brooke and I are pretty close in personality. Her and I have always meshed well. I love her. I love her family. She came in, and it just obviously I think she's been there 10 years, right?
She has, yeah.
Over 10 at this point, if I'm honest. She's done so well and just loves people well. She is so kind. She's so talented. My mom was actually on the hiring committee for her, and I remember I kept asking questions for months because I knew they were having interviews. And my mom said, "We're happy with the one that's made. Just be patient." And Brooke has walked through very many seasons of life with me, all the way from day one of me being 15 to now being almost 27. Her and I just have that relationship that it's great in the sense that I pick up right where I left off with her. Yeah. Every single time. And that's
Aren't those the best? Those are the best relationships. I've got several of those in my own life, and it's like, it's just easy. Yeah. You can not see or hang out with a person for a few years. Yeah. And when you see them again, it's like you saw them the week before, you just pick right up and catch up and move forward. And those you talk about authentic relationships and community, this world needs more of that. Yeah. We all need more of those relationships in our lives. And Brooke is, when she showed up, she was green as a gourd. I mean, but
she had hair as long as mine. I remember. I was like, "That's the youth pastor." Yeah, she looks like she's my age.
Yeah. That So a funny story, a funny Brooke and Charity and Mindy actually story. So, both of my boys, when they were 12, we had these kind of rite of passage young men walks, which is an idea that I got from Jimmy Asbell. And so for Wicks, we were over at Providence, neighborhood where my parents live in Macon, and Mom had rented or leased, reserved their pool house, which is a nice space, and you can have receptions and stuff there. And it was an all-day thing. We were there decorating. The boys, Wick had no idea that we were doing this thing. But anyway, my family, everybody, sisters-in-law, my brothers, we were all there decorating. And my brother Jeff comes in, and Jeff is very much a people person. And so he's working the room, getting to know people and talking. And Brooke and Charity and Mindy are there helping. So he had been interacting with them all day. And we get like into the evening, like into the reception and the party part. And Jeff asks just the right question, like what high school they go to or where they go to school or something. All along, he thought they were like my senior high kids. Like he thought this hadn't been that long ago. I mean, just 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it is. Pretty funny. 7 or 8 years ago, I guess. But we laugh about that. Jeff and I laugh about that. But then Brooke, especially. You remember that time your brother thought that me and Charity and Mindy were your students? I'm like, oh yeah, I remember.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so she comes in, the transition, I guess at some point the students must have bought in, man, because that ministry, there was some turbulence there when Mike was there. Yeah. And then by the time Craig was incredible for that church as a whole. I mean, all the way around.
I'm so, Charity talked about him on her podcast, but I was especially thankful in the way that he poured into my parents and just got them plugged in a Sunday school. The parsonage isn't far from where my parents live. Okay. And so they got to spend time together in that time. And he's the also epitome of a relational person and just does so well at it, is very kind-hearted, like truly exudes like the mission of what Christ wants for us. And because it was like Charity said on her podcast, like if you had an idea and if it wasn't absolutely outlandish, Craig ran with you and alongside you. Yeah. And I think that's what helped Brooke so much. Yeah.
Yeah. That mindset of let's try it. That and the other part, and most of the great leaders that I've been around, I've observed, I've worked for 2 of them. There is a common thread that expectation is really, really high and control is really, really low. So it's like expectations up here, but trying to micromanage and control how that's carried out is kind of down here. And that's something that most all of the best leaders that I've served under and been around, like Craig, you pop in and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Jimmy Asbell was gold at that. I would pop in and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And he'd think, oh my gosh, he said, well, that might work. Let's think about it this way. He kind of helped me. So yeah, I think Craig and Mary Louise were exactly what Trinity needed in that season. Just incredible people. But so the youth group thrived then during those years, and so you get out of high school. Did you go straight to Southern, or did you do 2 years local?
I did about 1.5 years local.
Local, okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember that.
Yeah, but maybe it was the call on my life that I knew that I had. Maybe it was just indecisiveness. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Okay. That's a hard thing to pin on a teenager, to choose what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Yes. Yeah. And I carried that weight pretty hard. At the time I was 17, 18, dating a guy that lived all the way across the country.
Was it Utah? Have I got that right?
He was in California.
California, okay.
Yeah, and he didn't believe in God, and that was just, I didn't know any better at that age, and I thought, you can change people. No, you can't. No, you can't. Yeah. That's God's doing, if that's going to happen. Yeah. You can plant seeds, but you can't make it grow, Sure. So, but anyways, so I was like, putting that on a lot of weight. I was like, where do I want to go to school? What do I want to do? And it came down to time I got into schools, and I was like, I don't really want to go anywhere. I don't really know what I want to do yet. And so my parents supported that decision, and I stayed home and I went to Middle Georgia. I think I initially declared undecided for and just worked on my core classes, and then made the decision to go to Georgia Southern, I think summer of 2016, and I
Okay.
knew I was going to transfer and I transferred in January of 2017.
Gotcha. Yeah, so in those years, that's when you were connected with the Space Between then, after high school
Yeah.
graduation, but before moving to Statesboro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the timeline and how all that flowed together. I just remember like you didn't miss. Like if we were running on a Thursday night, you were there.
Yeah. Well, and I know you, so I know we'll talk more about community because your heart for community is and mine are pretty matched. But that was all I had, like at that time, besides my parents.
Sure.
And in transparency, that worked out both very well in my favor because high school, in my personal opinion, this isn't for I wouldn't say the same for everyone, but high school, in my personal opinion, your friends are kind of picked for you in the sense of what you do and where you go, and like you're kind of just going with the flow of what everybody else is doing because of your level of maturity. And so I was a cheerleader, I did theater, so like I kind of had all these different friend groups, but the depth of those friendships wasn't really there. So after high school, most of them fizzled out. And then also my relationship on another side, my relationship with my dad was kind of coming into fruition because I would say I didn't really have a close relationship with my dad until college. Because he was gone so often. He retired when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. And so that time allowed me to build a phenomenal relationship with my dad as well as meet good community. And so when I was there, I didn't miss. And that was like, and me and Brooke talked about this after the wedding. Nothing was better. And I told y'all this. Nothing was better than being at that wedding because it was just, and I'll let you speak on it more, but it was just pure and wholesome of seeing everybody loves Charity and Drew. So seeing them two come together in marriage was amazing. And then also just the rest of the wedding spoke for itself, but also getting to be with some of my favorite people. For the friends of mine that I got to see, and this is just a shout out to them and to you as well. For the friends of mine that I got to see at that wedding that I don't talk to y'all more than when I come home or on a Facebook or Instagram message, know that I am cheering alongside you. I am praying for you. I love you. Ew, why am I getting emotional? Gross. But like that wedding was just a testament of I know where I have home.
Yeah, you got people down here. Yeah.
Yeah, we got people down here.
Yeah.
The dang true family.
Yeah.
But like I have community here, and I know I have community at home. And that is something that I know I have prayed for a long time.
Yeah.
Didn't matter my age. Because I'm moving so often and never understanding why I couldn't build those relationships, I built those. And coming home to that wedding proved it, of people who were like, because like you kind of wonder, it's like I haven't heard from them in a while. Do they even care about me? And I know it's vice versa. I can pick up a phone just as much as somebody else can.
Yeah.
But like being there just reminded me, because I've been to their weddings, I've been to their like family's funerals.
Oh yeah.
I've watched them have babies, and I know that they're doing the same thing and praying alongside me.
Yeah.
And that was just, that's the thing about Space Between that I'm thankful for, what I'm thankful about for home. But because those exact people that prayed for me and walked along life with me are the same ones that I know still do.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a consistent relationship. I met Caitlin Meter when she was still Caitlin Ratley. I was in high school. She was in college. She came on a D now. It was her and Morgan Minter. But I immediately popped off on a relationship with Caitlin Meter. And I love her to death, and it was good to catch up with her.
Such high caliber. You know, when you look at the people who were the core of the Space Between ministry, the students, I mean, it was the land of misfit toys, but there are some high character people.
Yeah.
I mean, when you back up now and watch as adults and young adults and see what they're doing and see where they are, and it's like, to your point, it's like we were talking earlier, when you get everybody together like that, it's, in my opinion, maybe it's not so rare, but in my life it is rare that you have a whole group that is that you cannot see one another for 2 years and pick right up. Mm-hmm. And I would dare say, and it'll be like that when we finally do pull off this Simplify retreat, but yeah. I would dare say if we put everybody back in the big room and ran through a normal night, then moved into a season of worship together in the black room, mm-hmm. it would be, I mean, we're all in different ages, different stages, different life experiences, but that authenticity and community and worship and the purity of pursuit and the desire to encounter Jesus in and through the Holy Spirit is when we finally see the Simplify retreats come to be, mm-hmm. Gonna be really, really, really cool.
Yeah.
So again, transition. So you graduate high school, you're in college, but you're local. You're working through your core. Mm-hmm. Another thing to your point, I told kids when I was in student ministry just recently. So Wick is a freshman at the University of Missouri, mm-hmm. Which blows my mind.
Yeah.
But even like in his senior year, after Christmas time, very well-meaning adults begin to, so what's your plans? Oh, I'm going to go to the University of Missouri. What are you going to major in? And it's like, that's an age-old question from well-meaning people, but I don't know that we understand the pressure unintentionally that puts on young people. And so having journeyed through that with countless teens, I began to tell Wick, like, people are going to ask you this. They're not trying to put pressure on you. And undecided is a perfectly good answer. Like, mm-hmm. I would rather you go, you're going to the university, go work on your core and decide your major sometime before you're a junior.
Yeah. Then
declare it now, go through a full course of study, graduate, and be like, oh my gosh. So we talked through that. Wick and I talked through that, and I was very, very proud of the way that he journeyed through that spring and summer when people would ask that. He'd be like, mm-hmm. You know what, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to go to the university, going to work on my core and just see where things go. But so if you're out there listening and you're a young person and you don't know what you want to do with the rest of your life, join the club. I mean, that there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to have it all figured out. If you're a young person out there that's known from the time you were 6 years old exactly what you were supposed to do, there's nothing wrong with you either. You should mm-hmm. actually give thanks and praise that you haven't had to wrestle through all the other. But mm-hmm. anyway, so back to your story. So again, another transition, like talking through this, I realized like your life has been a collection of transitions. Yeah. So graduate high school, you're local for the first 2 years, deeply connected in the space between, and then you transition to Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
What was that like? I know that from Johnny's, so Johnny talked about you. I don't know if you listened to Johnny, but.
No, I haven't gotten to listen to his yet.
So he talked about you. So a friend, a cousin of a friend hit him up to go to Wesley. Mm-hmm. And the very first night that he was at Wesley, it's in his podcast, it's in his episode.
Yeah.
You like meet him. You're mm-hmm. like, well, you walk up and you're like, hey, I know you. And mm-hmm. he's like, oh my gosh.
I forgot about that. That was with Caroline.
Yeah, in his episode, he's like, I'm a back row guy. I'm always a back row guy. Like, I'm a take it easy, sit in the back, observe kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And Alex, like, grabs me, and the next thing I know, like, we're sitting in the front row, mm-hmm. It's really, really funny in that portion of his episode. You should give it a listen. But so from that then, and just knowing you and kind of following you. Mm-hmm. So you go to Southern, start school, but then get deeply connected to Wesley.
Yeah.
What role did that play in your personal life, spiritual life, kind of development?
Yeah. So, Wesley Foundation, Mary Catherine Tucker, her dad, Jay Tucker, who ordained, you should get him on the podcast. God, he'd be amazing. But,
Yeah.
him and his wife, Kathy, did the wedding. I've known them. She is my longest standing best friend. She
Okay.
is also the epitome of the person. We could go 2 months without talking. Nothing bad. She only lives 45 minutes south of me, but we're adults. So, but anyways, besides the point. So, honestly, I transferred because of her.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted deep community, and her just being my closest friend, wanted to be closer to her. And just, I knew of somebody that was gonna, not for me to be relying on her, but, you know, like community to really walk alongside with me and things. So like, she mainly convinced me, like, hey, I think Southern would be a good choice for you. It has what you want. And so coming there, she was already plugged in, and it just kind of made things easier after that. And like, Wesley Foundation had a house on campus, which was also very appealing in the sense of just having another place to call home. It was very comfortable. And then just the friends that I've made from that. I still have that college friend group. One of my best friends from college, who MC and I lived with, actually just moved back to Savannah, and her husband were very active in Wesley Foundation. Sarah was our roommate. Sarah was the reason that I came to Compassion my first time, and but Wesley Foundation just poured into me. Jonathan Smith, he's at Pittman Park United Methodist Church in Statesboro, and I walked through leadership team. I was actually I rededicated my life because I was baptized when I was 12. My dad was about to leave for an emergency deployment, and so my dad wasn't going to be able to see me get confirmed. So I was like, well, I'll just get baptized so dad could see it, or just like be there. But I didn't understand the depth of that. After wanting to be baptized by immersion, really understanding like it's the outward dedication from within, those kinds of things, I was rededicated in baptism, and now I actually serve part-time on staff at Wesley Foundation. Currently as their creative coordinator, and I help with their social media, and actually I'll be there tomorrow to lead worship.
In Statesboro?
Yeah.
Sweet.
And so that's another example of God's fruition in my life. Their current leader, or their current pastor, has became a very close friend of mine, him and his wife. And then the ministry assistant of Wesley Foundation, Marcia Hagan, I lived with her on and off for about a year in college, just in transitions, because you're probably aware of this, but like leases in college kind of stink.
Yeah.
Like one ends and then you're basically homeless for a month. And so I would live with her, and then before I was able to get an apartment in Savannah, I lived with her in Statesboro, and I would commute before I could move, and I just multiple times. And Wesley taught me not only community and discipleship as well, and what that looked like at a young adult standpoint, being away from home, but also taught me mentorship. And Marcia lives out on a big old farm in the middle of nowhere in Statesboro, and her and I would do pulling weeds, picking up stuff on all over her farm, mowing her lawn, cooking together, watching TV, but like doing it in terms of her just mentoring me and pouring into me, and speaking truth and life. And like, I loved that, and I valued that, and I thank Wesley Foundation every day for her, because then it made me want to like step into that when I came to Savannah. I really craved that when I came here, of just having somebody older than me, just someone wiser than me that had walked through a lot of things. And so, yeah, I did a ton of things in Wesley, went on a bunch of mission trips, served in the community, did community groups, all that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of cool because some of the kids that were there on the tail end of when I was leaving and graduating are now about to graduate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Super cool to see all that coming. And going back to Jay and Kathy, or Jay at least, Jay was running Wesley when Charity was a student, right? And so she was under his leadership for all of her time at Southern. And then she ends up back in Middle Georgia, and he ends up appointed to Bon Air.
Yeah.
And so then for her to be able to sit under his leadership again for that tenure, super sweet the way that God works through relationships, man. And then fast forward all those years, they're back down in that region of Georgia. Mary Catherine then is at Southern at Wesley, and then that connection for you then to re-up with
they're
her
literally
and their...
They're 15 minutes down the road in Richmond Hill. Like
now?
I just...
Yeah. Yeah. Jay and Kathy, Jay especially, is somebody that I had, for a long time, had just kind of admired from afar. Never really got to know him deeply. Like when Scott was at Bon Air, I got to know Scott very well. Our kiddos are the same age, and carpooling, and just Connor then was on staff there, and so through Connor got to know Scott. And never really got to know Jay, but always had kind of top shelf respect for him. Not just his ability to teach, but the way he dealt with people, treated people. Just a top shelf guy. It was sweet to see him the other day at the wedding, and really that was the first time I got to talk to Kathy, and it kind of cool. You know, we were standing there after the service, and she came up and we kind of got to talking. She said, "You know, I feel like I know you, but I don't know you." And I'm like, yeah, it's a two-way street. You know, you run in those same circles, and you respect and admire people, but don't ever really get that chance to do life with them. So a couple things here. Discipleship, I want to talk through. Creativity, I want to talk through. Which would you like to hit first, discipleship or creativity?
Let's just hit discipleship.
Discipleship. So it's interesting. Next week, this coming Sunday, after I get done with worship, I have to leave and drive to Ohio for school. And so this is a rare week in that I'm recording 2 podcasts. So last night I recorded one, and then tonight we're together. And last night's will drop this Saturday, and then this one will drop the following Saturday. And so last night I'm interviewing Josiah Key, who lives out here. Incredible young man. I mean, you got to listen to that episode. But so I'm talking to him, and he's talking about discipleship and like the importance of discipleship, and this one man named Clayton who discipled him, and the importance of those years and the spiritual formation in his life. And so that kind of opened this can of worms in our conversation. And what I told him was, so years ago, so if you listen to or if you just throw a dart, you choose a website of any local church and you go, if they have their mission statement or their vision or their values or whatever posted, somewhere in their mission statement is going to have something to do about making disciples. And the more modern churches, it may not be in that vernacular, but the gist is we exist to honor God, to love people well, and to make disciples, right? And that's kind of
ours.
Go ahead.
Ours is leading people to a life-changing relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, discipleship.
Same gist.
Yeah.
Same gist.
And so for the longest time, it irked me to no end because the church exists to make disciples. Go back to Matthew 28. It's like, hey, go make disciples.
Amen.
And so I actually did this. There was a season of my life where I was really a challenger, pretty brash, and so I started calling friends who worked at churches. I called 10 or more, and I'm like, okay, here's your mission statement. What are you doing to make disciples? Like, how is your local church making disciples? And they're like, oh, we have Sunday morning worship, and we have men's Bible study and women's Bible study and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but like how, like, what is your discipleship program? Like, how are you making disciples? And they're like, oh, well, we have Sunday morning worship, and I'm like, okay, so you don't have a discipleship program. Like, there's nothing in place that's repeatable. That you don't have anything. So, of the churches that I called, it was more than 10. One church had like a bullet point, like, this is what we do, here's our process, this is the duration, this is how we approach it, this is how we go about it, would you like some literature, I can email you what we use, and I came away from that kind of experiment, I guess that's what it was, really convicted, like, we need to be intentional and we need to develop processes to disciple people that are repeatable. So that we can model things for a person, so that they can become comfortable in those things, and then can turn around and with their colors and shades and themselves, but can turn around and repeat that process. So a little bit ago you were saying, like much earlier, you were saying that, which I think is so awesome. So Compassion sending you back to school, and when you finish school, come 2026, you'll be on the pastoral team. And so part of what you said is kind of like community and discipleship. And so, like, it's such a, should not be, but it's such an abstract word and concept. So, like, do you all at Compassion, do you have a discipleship program? If you do, what does that look like? What's the duration? What are the components? Is it repeatable? Like, what's discipleship look like at your local church?
So a little backstory on Compassion. Compassion, like I said, is a mega church. Normal membership sits right now at 10,000. I actually looked at these numbers today, so I was accurate. Right now, membership sits around 10,000 people, but normal attendance is around like 14 to 15,000. Okay. And that's between 7 campuses ranged all over the Low Country. Okay. And so, and that also includes our online, but those numbers aren't accounted for in that. But like, we have an online community. And so if you want to, let's say, okay, I'm all bought in, I want to become a member of the church and I want to join a group. And so you join what we call Growth Track. And that teaches you the backstory of Compassion, how you can get plugged in, what our mission statement is, what we believe, and that's a 4-week process. Okay. So, like, we have we have multiple services every week, but, like, let's say if you're walking through our main campus, our Henderson campus, we have a 9, 11, 5, and 7 on a Sunday. And so we just ask that you come to Growth Track in either the 9 or 11 and you attend one of those multiple tutor services. And so then post Growth Track, then you can start serving as a volunteer, because we also run your background check during that time, assuming you're wanting to volunteer. And then you also just get placed in a group. So then once you're placed in a group, you go through Rooted, which is just a series of learning the fruits of the Spirit, of learning things like that, like fruits of the Spirit, the Gospels. Like, you just go through this book series together. I mean, it's been a hot minute since I've gone through it, and to be honest, we went through it as a church together a couple of years ago, and it was very good to kind of have that recap. But like I said, it's been a while. But then post Rooted, then you walk through whatever series we're in at the time of the church. So, like, right now we're going through our financial series, which is called Cost of Living, and we do Financial Peace University. That is offered for if you want to go through Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey, or like you can just you go through a series that the church offers, talking about finances. Personally, my group right now, I'm in a leadership study with our staff pastor, and we're walking through Emotionally Healthy Spirituality.
Oh, so good, yeah.
Love that book. And then next, reading John Mark Comer's Be Become Do, that he just dropped today, actually. But I haven't done the alignment of what Compassion's done in a while, just because I'm taking a different course with my staff members. Currently, what I'm discipling my college girls through at the moment is just through the book of Peter. That's what they asked for, so that's what we're walking through. That's typically we go through like 5-6 chapters at a time, and then, but yeah, so it's a consistent cycle, especially like once rooted takes a minute. So then, like, if you, let's say you graduated from growth track last week, you get placed in a group next week, you're probably not going to be caught up with what the series is alignment until probably about May.
Okay.
Because it takes, a while, assuming you're going through weekly. But also we offer different programs for people in different stages of life, singles, grief counseling. We just recently started a series for mothers, and then our military community as well.
Cool. So what will your eventual role be? Will you kind of oversee, you said community and discipleship? Is that, okay, so what does that look
yes.
like? Like what would be your responsibilities?
So monthly gatherings for women across all of our 7 campuses, and that would entail me doing in-person preaching at least at one of them, and then I would be broadcasted in. And then mentorship as well as organizations for structures of groups. So like, stay-at-home moms, college age, and widows kind of situation. Just like the structure of that and what they are offering currently. It looks like we may be going through what Passion City Church is going through for their women's program until we can create our own curriculum. I start curriculum planning in the fall of next year, which that's a lot of pressure.
You're going to be so good at it, though.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's just, I think I said this to you at the wedding. Sometimes I feel like I'm still 16. So this role is very, especially while we're talking about transitions, and I told you this at the wedding, our pastor has been on staff at 40 years with no moral failure. I was very skeptical about Cam Huxford at first. I was like, but then just getting to know his heart and who he is, he's a phenomenal person. He's a great leader. I'm thankful to serve under his leadership, but he retires this September. Wow. And so we don't know who our next senior pastor is yet. So this is a huge transition for our church. It's very intimidating. We did breath prayers the other day as a staff of just saying, God, like, I know that you can take what I cannot control and try not to let me take on what I know that I can't, kind of thing. And so with that, we have a group of people who are stepping up into the next generation, and we're called Next Gen because we're the next generation of pastors. And him and his wife have really helped us through that. And so she's helping me write this curriculum even after they both retire in September. But we'll go through Flourish's program in the beginning until we can finish our own women's curriculum. Gotcha. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. I'm so excited to be able to cheer you on and watch as this kind of unfolds. That's going to be, I understand why they tapped you for that job. You're going to be incredible.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah. So then creativity. You talked about, like, in high school you were in theater, drama, and the arts, choral, chorus. Miss Vicky was amazing. But with the youth chorus, handbells, the whole shebang. Have you been creative your whole life? At what point did you realize, like, I am a creative?
So my mom's stepdad was a band director and a phenomenal artist, and they just specifically him and my grandmother tapped into me from a young age. My grandmother is currently 87 years old. She turns 88 in April, and she still teaches dance to this day.
Awesome.
They are both very musically driven. My grandfather passed away about 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he poured into me and knew that I had that in me, from just drawing with me, teaching me how to like sing, I did a little bit of piano with him in the time that he was still alive, and he just the epitome of like he saw my potential. And so yeah, I like always drawing. A lot of the time I was the kid that was more excited to play with the cardboard box than I was with whatever was inside of it, because it was anything at that point. My mom consistently makes jokes about that. And so, in my entire life. And especially serving in ministry, I kind of wrestled in the beginning when I first started as a church creative of like, am I really in ministry?
Oh yeah, that's like, good. Yeah.
Because it's like I serve for a ministry, but I'm not doing ministry. But then I went to the Passion Creative Conference, and they just talked about the fact of like, we serve under the ultimate creator, and we are creative, and we are envisioning what we envision and we create for the church is an open door and an invitation for somebody else, no matter how small or how big it is. And so that really allowed me to delight in what I create for him. And it makes me glorify him 10 times more, because my talents were a gift from him that I'm able to share. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, and this ministry, let me tell you, from the other side of the tracks, it is ministry. I mean, every thumbnail, every post, any image that's put up on the screens through ProPresenter, any sizzle reels, and all of those things is a gift. That's ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for that, because like it's also allowed me to hear so many hearts of people. So my creative team is 8 people, 3 videographers, 1 social media, 2 graphic designers. I don't know. There's a bunch of people in there. And so we all do something different, and it allows me to so what we call is like, I'm central. So I serve everybody in that capacity, and I get to sit in a lot of meetings and hear firsthand of like what our church is doing. And like, especially being behind the lens of a camera, I get to capture baptisms and life change and worship, and that in itself, then I get to capture that, and like, that's just something tangible that our church gets to hold, because I have that talent that I can share. And it sometimes it's taxing when I'm editing thousands of photos after some large event, or making 23 art boards for some service. Like, it seems so minor. My friend Roxy is somebody that I got to walk through college with, and now I get to work with my best friend, and that is something really cool. And so she is one of our graphic designers. We both create things graphically in different capacities, but she creates the sermon artwork. And it's so cool to hear her speak on how she does it. And it's the smallest details of things. Of like, she put a hue of a light over like Christ manger to say like he's the light of the world. But that's not something you're going to be looking at when it's on the screen. You know, but it's that tiny detail. Because like, look at all the details that he created in us to be able to make us shine a little bit brighter for him. So like, just those kinds of things. And I'm just like thankful for that. I mean, like I said earlier, never would have thought creative ministry would have been a possibility at all.
Yeah.
But here I am.
And it's going to grow. That need is growing and growing. I'm sure you've seen it just in the years that you've been at Compassion, 4 years now. But that need, as this, you know, we're past Gen Z now and into Gen A, Alpha, and whatever is beyond that. I don't know what they're going to call it. Anyway, the need to connect visually, digitally, and the 2.8 seconds that you've got to get somebody to stop scrolling.
Yeah.
The media side of ministry is only going to increase, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your hopes? What are your dreams? Dream big. What are your dreams moving forward? What's kind of front top of mind? What are you praying into?
So it looks like I'll be at Compassion for a pretty long time.
Awesome.
But like, let's say if I could pick tomorrow what I'll do for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
I would eventually like to go back to school at a different time to be a women's counselor. And
Okay.
whether that's a practice that I can open up through Compassion or externally to just offer women's counseling. I won't go into details, but I went through some very rough things in the spring of last year. And I just know that there are women that have walked through the same thing and that I can walk alongside them. And maybe it's something that I preach on and it's a fruit that I don't see on this side of heaven. And I'm more than okay with that. Like that's what happens. And that's a blessing in itself as well. But specifically what I went through, I know there's other women that have endured it.
Yeah.
And I know that I would want to, because there were women when I spoke up about it, there were women on staff as well as some of the pastors' wives that just came and really held me hand in hand in those trenches of what I endured. And Charity was one of them. And then I had people, like I said, I had people from home who helped me through that time. And I had people here that literally, like, not even held my hand, like holding me up while my feet are dragging, because I didn't, I was like a day by day situation. And I now see that. And I know that, like, when you're going through something that's the hardest time in your life for something that you couldn't control, you kind of turn. And the thing was at that time, and this is what I want other women to know as well, and not even just women, but like, there's just that sisterhood of that I want from that, because men endure things differently and like women endure things differently. But there's, in that time of me going through those things and not knowing like what tomorrow was going to hold, I still knew God was sovereign, but it was hard to see that in that moment. And other people need to know that as well. And the thing was like, if I wouldn't have known how good God was, I would have walked away from ministry and God within its entirety and probably deconstructed my faith by now. Like, just in the span of a year's time. But because I had people that said, like, I went through this, I know how painful it is, let me help you. And let me talk to you, because there were some people that didn't know what I was going through because they didn't experience that, but they still stood beside me. And there was women who encouraged me so well, and also got me plugged in with therapy, which helped immensely to take me out of those trauma responses that I was having. And now, coming up on almost a year within a month of what happened, I know that God wasn't punishing me, because, like, we look at God as Abba the Father and we want to think like, I did something wrong, I'm being punished. So much goodness has came out of something that was so tough for me. And I want to teach others that. And so, long story short, sorry I kind of rambled there for a second.
You're fine.
But I want those women to know, like, there's goodness in that. And so through counseling, I would like to do that. Or just continue to do what I'm doing now. Whether that's, sometimes I think staying at Compassion long term. And then sometimes I think of going to other churches, and because finding, and this is nothing on Compassion, I think this is everywhere.
Sure.
Finding women in the church to mentor other women in the same position is very difficult to find. And sometimes there are smaller churches that don't have that. And so I know that if that could be something that I just mentor women, and throughout the country, throughout the state, throughout the city, I don't know. But yeah, big picture dream.
Sweet. Cool. All right. So I forgot you and I were talking right before we came on camera. And last night when I recorded Josiah, I forgot to ask him, doggone it. I'm going to have to lump him in with Gabe now. So I forgot on Gabe. And we were laughing because Michael Meeks, Matthew's brother, he reminded me, you forgot to ask me how I keep things simple, and I don't want to be lumped in with Gabe at the end of every episode. And then inadvertently last night, I did it to Josiah, and so now Josiah will be linked with Gabe as 2 out of 20. That's not too bad. What's that? Is that, what, 10%?
Yeah.
10% that I've forgotten. Not too bad for an old guy who's been hitting the head too much. So... I'm going to remember tonight. Alexandria Simonton. The name of the podcast is the Keep It Simple Podcast. And so we end every episode by asking, how do you keep it simple?
I think the best way that I can answer this is something that you told me a really long time ago. And that's God doesn't send love letters. He sends people. And so I just try to, in those moments of when I am with people, of being present and seeing what God's telling me in the best way that I can serve them and see how God's allowing them to serve me as well.
Amen. Yeah, such a good word. All right, thank you. Hey, how can people connect? So one thing that's happened through this podcast is people from the Midwest are listening to people from the Southeast and vice versa, and folks are wanting to kind of reach out and connect. What's the easiest way, most preferred way for folks to connect?
So Facebook, Alexandria Simonton, and then my Instagram is
Rhinestone Cowboy.
Yeah,
that threw me off so bad. Like, now it's you, but when you made that change, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. So I started wearing big old cowboy hats.
Oh, I know.
And so like my dad is like the epitome of the cowboy in every sense of the word. And so through him, I wear these big old cowboy hats and cowboy boots all the time. And living in Savannah, that's a little bit odd.
Yes.
But if you know me well enough, it matches with my personality. But
yeah, you don't care.
So when we were in online studio, I would walk in the room and I'd have my hats on and my cowboy boots, and people would start playing Rhinestone Cowboy over the speakers. And I didn't want to make it a joke. I actually really liked it. And so it's funny that I was in Target in Savannah the other day, and there's these 2 teenage girls on the same aisle, and they were whispering to each other, and they were like, why do I know that girl? They were like, that's Rhinestone Cowboy. So that holds me accountable on how I speak or what I do on a platform. Yeah. And how I carry myself in public, because it's just funny that if you're going to know me by anything, that's the best thing. I mean, that's the best song to play.
Rhinestone Cowboy. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Alexandria, thank you for your time. Thanks so much. Yeah. I'm glad that the larger community, folks out here especially, get to know you, hear your story. Yeah. So gracious with your time and vulnerability. Thank you. I guess we will talk to you
later.
Later.
Let's do another episode. I don't care. Call me back.
Okay. All right. See ya.